Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Nile and Jerry Tea Podcast. Podcast that is all about Magic the Gathering, its drama, the competitive scene. Brought to you by me, Nile Joan Rivers, and my co-host, Jerry T, aka Jerry Thompson. How are you doing tonight, Jerry?
Good. You may notice that we're wearing the same clothes as last week. So
No one.
now they do. And
Shit.
I mean, if you haven't seen last week's, go watch it because
Go
it's
watch
good.
it. What are you doing? It was a good one.
And now when I say I'm sleepy, you kind of know why.
Yeah. It's late for Jerry. That's true. That's true. Thank you, Mincy. This is a special episode. This is, I believe, episode 13, lucky number 13, which, first of all, little, pop champagne, kudos to us. It means we've been doing it for over 3 months now. Yippee. That's
Whoa.
kind of cool. That's kind of cool.
Whoa.
3 months, haven't missed a beat on uploads. How many people can say that? Come on.
No,
Like,
and this is the first time where, someone has plans. Spoiler, it's not me because I have
it's
no
me.
life. So yeah, we're still finding ways to make sure that we don't miss episodes. We'll just
Yeah,
record them
I'm
back to back. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm going to a Twin Peaks orchestra next week. It's gonna be so sick. Well, I guess really I should say I went to a Twin Peaks orchestra last night because that's gonna be the time dilation of this releasing. So episode lucky number 13, episode 13. We're gonna do a thing that we've been talking about wanting to do for a while. We've mentioned it not to you but to each other, and that is a Nile asks Jerry anything she wants episode. And I'm excited. I'm excited to ask Jerry anything because I love asking questions. I'm a curious person, but also I find myself not asking questions very often because just despite being a curious gal, I'm just also comfortable living in ignorance and not knowing shit unless it seems like people want me to know it. So I'll have questions in my little head. I just won't ask them most of the time. But when someone gives me
Hmm.
free reign to just like, hey, ask away, I'll ask away. So, Jerry,
Yeah.
how you feeling aside from sleepy?
So I talk a big game
Mhm.
about I'm an open book. You can literally ask me anything. I can't think of a thing that you could ask me that I won't answer it. We'll see if that actually happens. My instinct was that you're going to try and push up against that line, but I think you're going to fall short.
Maybe.
So we will see.
It's
But
really
I am
funny
worried. I am worried.
sure, there's worry inside of you. I love that. Uh it's funny because I think I'm a very similar way as to what you're describing, where I'm always like, I'm an open book. You just tell me like the page you want to read, right? And I'll read it to you. Which is to say, like, if someone asks me a thing about myself, I will gladly volunteer basically any piece of information. But I try not to just like, give out that information without it being requested. So it's a very like, if you turn to the page, you can read any of the pages, but I'm not just gonna like crack the book for you.
Yeah.
Now, I think if I'm being brutally honest, if I'm laying my soul bare on this podcast, I would say what is maybe more accurate is that I am a very open book about a lot of things that have been strategically decided that I will be open about. And these things are deep and personal enough things that when people hear them, they're like, that's Oliver. That's everything she could possibly have. She really will say anything. Like she'll tell me anything that I want to know. But I think that's not actually true. I think that there is this like open book of so much of myself, my history, my life, my feelings, my thoughts. And then there's this like guarded temple behind that of like, you won't even think to ask about these things because there's all this stuff out in front that is like so much like the flashy smoke screen that keeps
Yeah.
you.
The red herrings of Nile.
Yeah. So I guess my first question is, do you feel like that at all?
I do. I feel like there are also maybe some questions that you're like, "Oh, maybe I won't ask this because it's in, like, poor taste or it's offensive or something." So I feel like that part of my mind palace might be safe. I don't know.
Yeah, well, my goal is not necessarily to like, you know, access your hidden temple Mime Palace and like broadcast it to the people. My goal is definitely to push the boundaries and find like where the I want to feel the wall. I want to feel the outer wall of the Mime Palace and be
All
like,
right.
"Oh, okay." And then I want to be like, "All right. I just wanted to know where it was, you know? Just want to know
Concern
where it was."
rising, concern rising, but
We'll see. We'll see.
we'll see.
Okay, so let's see. You've been playing games a long time. We've talked about your origin of games. We've talked about your origin of magic specifically. I guess my first question for you, well, I guess I already asked my first one, which was the Mind Palace one. My next question for you is how this is a broad question. How has it felt living so much of your adult life as a, like, card game player?
Well, I don't feel like I have quote unquote grown up, I suppose.
Mhm,
And that is both a positive and a negative. I think in terms of, I don't know, we did like the why games matter episode, right? I feel like a lot of people could point to a thing like that and it's like, well, you don't have kids and
mhm.
blah blah blah, and it's like, well, yeah, but I also don't necessarily really want those things either. So I don't know, like I am happy, like these are the things that I enjoyed when I was a teenager. They're the things I enjoyed in my 20s and my 30s. I'm now in my 40s and I'm still super happy doing this stuff, and I don't know why I would ever want to do a thing that made it so I couldn't do these things, and then I engage with it in a way that can also help bring joy to other people through, teaching or making games or whatever too. So like, I don't know. It definitely feels weird, and I understand how people could be like kind of judgy about it, perhaps, but I'm very happy with where I am and the path that I've been on, and it is kind of weird and wild to think that I'm able to do this because I'm just like I want to do this.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. I also, like that kinda resonates for me a little bit, even just as someone who has sort of been a figure in the space for only, like, 3 or 4 years. I can already tell that there is this, like, shift of it's kind of a thing where, like, when I go to, like, make friends right now, I'm 32 years old. If I meet a 32-year-old who is totally just, like, not online at all, it's just, like, a 32-year-old person who's never really, like, I don't know, maybe they have, like, a Facebook, like, they have, like, no they're just, like, not online. It's not, like, a maturity difference, I don't feel, but there is like a we have just been we're in such different directions that I feel like we can't even really talk, you know?
Yeah.
And but on the flip side, if I talk to like a I don't know, 26-year-old, I'm like, "Oh, you are just like too immature." You know what I mean? Like you don't have the maturity, but like this other 32-year-old has the maturity, but we're just like I what I need is like people in their 30s who are also like they have a little bit of brain rot. You know what I mean? Like they have a
Yeah.
little bit of like terminally online
My people.
like yeah, yeah, yeah. Like because I don't feel like doing this has like stunted me. In fact, like some of the best and most useful therapy I've done in my whole life, where I've spent most of my life in therapy, has been in the last couple of years. I'm really like on some good shit the last few years. But there is a certain level of like doing what I do. I interact with and interface with a generation that's like just a little bit under mine, like just like people who are like 6 years younger than me and younger. And just naturally, I get good at like talking to them and like making stuff for them. And so because of that, I don't know. I find it I just find it hard to hang out with like 30-year-olds who aren't at all online because I'm just like we aren't even really speaking the same language, you know.
Yeah. I kind of like that though, because I mean, in terms of, broadening your horizons or whatever, like I
Mhm.
do value that sort of stuff. Like one of the things that playing Magic has given me is being able to meet people from like all across the world, right? And
Mhm.
I have like people who I would consider to be my friends, like not just acquaintances, but like actual friends
Yeah.
in various countries and whatnot. And I would not have had that without games and trying to figure out like yes, these are the things that are different about us, but like where can we connect? What is that commonality? And like how can I interface with you in a way that is meaningful? Like it's very rewarding for me when I do finally find kind of like that path or whatever. Because like we're all humans. I do think that we can connect to
Totally.
some degree, no matter what.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you there. So speaking of, the various friendships and relationships you've made over your time in the space, what would you say are your two relationships that have had the biggest impacts, both positively and negatively, specifically from being in this space, being in the games space?
You want
And you
one
don't
that
have to
is
like, yeah, one that is positive, one that is negative.
okay.
You don't have to name names if,
Oh,
but like is up to you.
can they be the same person?
Holy shit, yeah. Yeah.
So there's Spotlight Series Grand Prix in Indianapolis. Oh, like the weekend after this is coming out.
Yeah.
And I spent about 5 years living in Indy. And since I am going back, I was talking to a buddy of mine who still lives out there, who I knew from back in the day, but who is actually a friend of mine from Minnesota, where we were both born. And
Mhm.
he was a couple years younger than me. I was basically like the big bro, drove him around to tournaments and whatnot. And he and I got to talking, just kind of catching up a little bit. And the person effectively who brought us both to Indy in the first place was a dude by the name of Gabe Walls. And he's dead now, unfortunate. But he is the exact kind of person that I would describe as like very good and very bad. And the thing that me and my buddy Steve were talking about was the fact that it is hard to, I don't know, like come to terms with that. Like you can't just put this guy in a box. Like the feelings are
Mhm.
very complicated. Where like I learned a lot of who I am came from that guy, for sure.
Mhm.
I just made this post on Blue Sky talking about how I had two mentors, and like one of the things about them that was really instilled in me was that like I can break the rules or I can look for a way around them. And this guy just embodied that. Like to the point where it was
Mhm.
problematic at times. And I would like to think that I, kind of cherry picked the good stuff and maybe left the bad stuff. But
Yeah.
he was an absolute force, like just way too much charisma, way too smart. Oftentimes these things were working to his own detriment, and he did a ton of good for specifically the people who were close to him in terms of like he did well in the World Series of Poker, won $90,000 in 2005. Also kind of funny story related to that is that he played in it, I think, a week or two after his 21st birthday, which was that's when you can play. But he had qualified for it much earlier via some online satellite tournament. And
Sure.
so they see he gets there, they see that he qualified when he was underage, and they're just like, what can we do about it now? But like that was the kind of guy he was. So he spikes
Sure.
90K and he uses that money to try and help his friends. He was like, well, I have all these friends who are Magic players who are kind of dead ending effectively, like didn't go to college, dropped out of college, just failing to live up to potential or whatever. And so he's like, I want to do a thing where I can just like give them jobs. I want to start a business. And so he decided to start a very illegal poker room. And it's just it just encapsulates every part about him, right? Where like he's doing a good thing and like breaking the rules, but like this is probably not the best way to go about it because it's very bad. And
Yeah, it's really chaotic good kind of energy.
for sure, for sure. And part of that too was that he did like collecting debts. He did like just having
Mm.
people owe him, and it wasn't
Mhm.
like, "Oh, I'll just do this silently." There were times where like he would get mad at you and then hold it over your head. Very very manipulative.
Sure, sure.
And that kind of fucked me up a little bit, but I think for whatever charisma I am able to mask, for however I'm able to find a way to relate to people, it was just watching this guy, just watching this absolute master in action. We're like, in the finals of the tournament, I watched him split with a dude who was a mutual friend of ours, where he got more money and the trophy, and the guy felt good about it. And then like the next day, the guy had regrets, obviously, but then was also able to talk him into it effectively again. And he could insult you to your face and make you laugh along with him, just like weird stuff, like superpower stuff that you don't see many people have. And to the amount that I'm able to mask that is like but a mere fraction of this guy's power.
Sure, sure. Wow, that's a good. I mean, most positive and most negative being the same guy is really it's really a statement. So you grew up in Minnesota.
Yeah. I mean, yeah,
What
sure. You betcha.
what was growing up in Minnesota like? What was childhood Jerry before, pro tour wins and stuff? What were the early days like?
Pretty terrible. Parents divorced when I was 5. Mom had sole custody. Dad lived one town away. Saw him
Do you
maybe
have
once or twice
siblings?
a year. Yeah. Uh, 2 brothers, one older, one younger, and mom worked 3 jobs, like 2 to 3 jobs constantly to, provide for her kids and basically was not ever able to do anything for herself. And
That's tough.
yeah, dad, mostly did not pay child support. And I guess I was always confused as to like why there was no recompense for that or whatever, why he never seemed to be punished for it. Was just like, this doesn't really make any sense. But yeah, uh, kind of gives you a little bit of a jaded worldview, I suppose. But my mom was completely wonderful. She was maybe the most selfless person I've ever known. Like I said, did not get to do anything for herself, but was not like bitter or upset about that. She just loved her kids and wanted to give us the best life possible. And we got evicted probably once a year. Mom occasionally would end up in jail for not being able to pay certain bills or whatever. And it was rocky. It was rough. It was very chaotic, very unstable, and that had ramifications into my adulthood where it took a person who was very close to me to recognize that my life at the time was complete chaos and that it seemed like I felt comfortable in that and would not be comfortable with, some sort of settling down or whatever. I was just like, that shit's crazy. And then it was like, oh, wait, no, yeah, she's right. So, very, very, very weird, very, very strange. My mom was great. The rest of my family, pretty terrible, varying degrees of abusive, which again had to be pointed out to me later because I don't know, that's just what life was for me, you know? It was
Mhm.
like sometimes you just get hit all the time. You get called worthless piece of shit every day. Like that was just what it was. And as soon as I saw a chance to leave, which was Gabe basically calling me and telling me to move to Indy and work in his poker rooms, I took it and I don't talk to them anymore. Like my mom died when I was 18. I moved when I was 21. So
Jeez.
I have 2 brothers who I like them well enough, certainly my younger brother, but yeah, just proximity to a bunch of people that I hate, so I just don't talk to them.
Yeah. No, that's, super reasonable. I think it's very common and normal to, like, when you grow up in abuse, to just, like, not be able to identify that that's what's happening until someone points it out to you, and then it's like, "Oh, shit. That's not normal. That's not." I thought that was just, like, how life was.
Yeah. Yeah, shout out Joe Crosby, friend of mine in Atlanta who I haven't talked to in a while for just, at dinner, just the 2 of us, he asked me some questions, and they seemed all, like, fairly innocent or whatever, but he's, like, "Tell me
Mhm.
about this, tell me about this," and then at the end, he was like, "Yeah, that's abuse," and he just handled it with, like, the most grace and, like, you know, knew what I was describing, knew that he needed me to expand on it further, you know,
Mhm.
and then to just very subtly just, like, drop it, not try to, like, force it on me or anything, but, like, that was very much a turning point for me where I was like, "Oh, holy shit."
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, that's really good that he was able to handle such a delicate thing so delicately. So, great job, Joe Crosby.
Hell yeah.
So, strike out on your own, 21, working illegal poker rooms. What kind of poker? Like blackjack? Hold'em?
Yeah, hold 'em. We're open every night, and it was just like a free roll tournament that starts at $7,000 guaranteed. We would have like 100 people, And then we would start cash games as those tables would break down. So like the free roll was an incentive to get people in the building. And then we would deal these cash games where we would rake, we told them 10% max of the pot. But the funny thing about that is people generally pay attention to the game and not
Mhm.
to how much you're taking out. And when the game is like, oh, look at this pretty turn card, you can just take another fiver off the table and people don't notice. So we were very much
Yeah.
encouraged to overrake the pots as much as possible and to make our managers more money.
Sure, sure, sure. And I mean, so because I know stuff with poker stuff, the legality gets weird in a lot of places. So for one, in a place like Indy, is it even possible to have like a legal to run a legal poker game?
Well, Gabe, being the smart guy that he was, set it up in such a way where it was like as close to legal as possible, where he set it up as a nonprofit. Like we're just a club and
Mm,
we had membership, and certainly there were some amount of like bribes that were happening too that I was not entirely privy to. I just know that
mhm,
they were happening, and it was basically looked at as gray area. Like, I
sure.
think most people involved thought that we were safe from any sort of like crackdown or prosecution just because it's not really worth it. And it also just happens to be a predominantly white thing. And
Yeah, yeah.
that ended up being our downfall, where one of the people who was in office decided to crack down on specifically like black gambling establishments. It was like pea shake houses. And then that blew back on them and they looked bad. And then they're like, oh, I guess
Oh, we
we have to
gotta
crack down
shake down a
on
bunch of the
some of
white
these white
ones.
people. And
Yeah.
so like within a week, so like over the course of the years, these rooms were very successful, as you might imagine. And
Mhm, mhm.
Gabe opened up more and more in different areas. And within a week, we had been raided by the police and they had shut down all of them.
Damn. But, like, taking a rake is always an illegal part of it, right? Like, that is always, like that is what so, my knowledge of this is coming from the movie Molly's Game, you ever
I
seen
read the
Molly's
book.
Game?
I read the book before it was a movie. I watched the movie. It's not too dissimilar, honestly.
Really?
Minus like Toby
Yeah,
Maguire.
and it's Tobey Maguire being there?
Because after this happened, my credit was bad because of this and because of Gabe. Because we tried to do Molly's Game type of shit out of an apartment. Like, and because Gabe didn't want his name to be
Oh,
on it, he was like, you can run it if it's in your name. And then we struggled to actually get it going for various reasons, ended up defaulting on the apartment. And that just destroyed my credit for like 10 years.
that's crazy. Damn. So not too dissimilar from Molly's Game.
Not too dissimilar. I mean, reading the book and just so many things, I was like, yeah, like I lived this exact aspect of this thing. Wild.
Fun movie. Maybe
I don't
maybe hits too close to home for you, but
I don't really remember exactly like, did I enjoy the movie or whatever, but I did think it was very cool that there was like this niche book wrote or written about
about, like,
a thing
your
that was
life
like,
experience.
yeah. Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
I tell people about this all the time and they are just like, wow, that's really weird. I can't relate to any of this. And then it was suddenly like, oh, like this is happening in other places.
Yeah. So, you do the Molly's Game thing. They crack down. Where do you go from there with your, being, like, early 20s, bad credit, few prospects?
Well, the credit thing didn't matter to me quite yet.
Crazy.
Which, well, I don't know. I mean, I had so at this point, I had $20,000 under my bed in a shoebox in cash.
Oh, sure.
And
So you were like, who needs credit? I have 20 grand cold hard
exactly.
cash." Yeah. No,
You
that's
get it.
actually pretty
See,
reasonable.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So, at some point, I just grabbed $8,000 and had my friend take me to a dealership because I needed a car, you know?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes, you don't need
and
credit
then
when you have $8,000 cash.
yeah, exactly. I was just like, "What do you got for 8K?" And they're like, "Why?" And I was like, "'Cause I have $8,000 in my pocket and I wanna spend it." And they're like, "Oh, sold me a lemon. It sucked." But
Ugh.
Yeah, it didn't matter all that much because of things like that. But eventually the money dried up. And what happened
Right.
was, so my friend Steve, he was kind of having a bad time back in Minnesota and, called me just to, you know, catch up and like sort of vent and get advice and whatever. And I was like, look, man, we have this poker room thing going on. Like, you're a smart dude. I'll vouch for you. Like, you could definitely move down here, crash with us for a bit until you get on your feet. It took me maybe like a month or two. And I remember he got dropped off. He had some friends drive him and he got out with just like 4 trash bags of stuff. And I think like 2 of the trash bags were just shoes. It was just his shoes. I was like, this is crazy. But then yeah, we started training him up in the poker rooms. 2 weeks later, we got raided.
Damn.
So we're all kind of in the situation where we're kind of boned. But Gabe has a decent amount of nest eggs, sort of, but like he
Mm.
was he was also spending like 6 grand a week,
Jesus Christ.
What yeah, which is bananas, but like that's how much money he was making. So me, Steve, and Gabe got an apartment in Indianapolis, and Steve starts doing some bartending stuff, which is effectively what he is doing to this day. Like he is won numerous awards and accolades for like being the best mixer, mixologist, and like bartender in Indianapolis. Like he's absolutely killing it. I love it.
That's
Uh,
amazing. Love that for
and
him.
then I was just playing Magic Online for a living. And then I started dabbling in online poker or whatever, but that was about it. And there was a period where Magic Online went down it was supposed to be for a week. And I was like, no big deal. I can make this work. But they were switching from version 2 to version 3. It ended up being down for
Mm.
a month. And that like crippled me.
Yeah. Well, okay, hold on. So, because it feels crazy to me that I don't know the answer to this question as someone who's a deeply enfranchised Magic player
Oh,
and
yeah.
someone who has directly worked with Magic Online
Oh,
and
yeah.
like made countless pieces of media for them. How the fuck does someone make a living playing Magic Online?
Grinding. You play in whatever big tournaments they have, and they give you some booster packs. You ideally are selling the booster packs when they are high, and that gives you tickets, and then you can sell tickets to people or bots. They'll like PayPal you, and it's not easy. It is not easy at all. You have to play a lot, and you have to be really, really fucking good. And
Yeah.
I think for places like I think you hear this more happening in areas like Brazil, where like Brazil has a ton of talented players, and
Mhm.
it just so happens that like the dollar is stronger compared to their currency, so like it actually ends up being
Mm.
like a reasonable hourly for them, but like not for
Sure,
anyone
sure.
in America. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was not making good money,
Interesting.
you know.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just a thing where like I mean, are you is part of the grind also like are you just like 5-0ing leagues like crazy? Like or is it really just like the events?
I mean, if there was nothing else going on, then yeah, I would be playing in those or playing in the 8 player queues or whatever. And certainly how I engage with Magic is not how I engaged with it back then. It was like I would figure out what the best deck is and then just play that ad nauseum. And it was boring as hell. Uh
Mhm.
so I don't
So
know.
you would
I
just
was
like so you would
pretty
like so if it's like okay, Rakdos Scam's the best deck. You're like I'm going to go play like a week's worth of Rakdos Scam and then I'm going to enter into every event as
yeah,
like the most like I have more reps than everyone in the room.
yeah, exactly. And you just playing all those tournaments. Sometimes it involved like double queuing as well. Just because
Cuz it's just to get your hourly up.
yeah, exactly. Like there was no other way to do it. It was like I could try to win more, but like Magic has some variance, and
Yeah.
uh maybe there's a format I can't necessarily figure out or whatever. But yeah, if,
Right.
if you were really good and all you were doing was trying to win, it was doable, but it was like maybe you make like 2 grand a month.
Sure. Did you ever get into like the money draft scene? Like I know there's a bunch of people who are just like let's money draft Vintage Cube all the time.
Yeah, I tried to do that, but the thing about it is the teammates are unreliable.
Sure.
I'm pretty sure I am down lifetime in money drafts, and certainly
Really?
my record was not good in all of them, right? But like, I think a lot of it too was that I was mostly just playing against people and teams who were better on average than my teams. So
Yeah,
I knew that it was
sure.
not a smart thing to be doing.
Sure, sure, sure. Makes sense. So you move to Indy. You're a moto grinder. You're doing that full time, and then moto goes down for a month. What happens then?
Uh, I don't recall if this was actually what coincided with this, but I'm going to tell you anyway because I don't want to feel like, oh, I'm dodging this because it
Sure.
might not line up. I
Sure,
think
sure, sure.
realistically, it probably didn't line up because we probably had to be, uh, I don't know, not flush, but like have some money to spare. But like I did help a friend of mine sell drugs for a little bit,
What kind of drugs?
just marijuana.
Oh, sure, sure, sure. Yeah. I mean, who amongst us hasn't sold a little weed from time to time in the prohibition era?
Yeah, I mean, thinking about it now, it's like silly, right? Because
Yeah.
it is legal or at least like decriminalized in a lot of spots or whatever. But I was not happy about it
Mhm.
at the time. And it
Yeah,
was
no,
like
totally.
a month of doing that and just, being able to like buy a brick and sell it. And it was like, okay, well
Mhm.
now we can pay rent. And then it ended. That was it.
Yeah, yeah.
Like what
Gotta
what
do
the
what you
hell
gotta
else are
do.
you supposed to do?
Yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do, you know? It's whatever. It's in capitalist America, you do what must be done. So, mostly moto grinding, but doing whatever you gotta do to make ends meet. And this is just life for a while?
For a bit, yeah. At some point, due to the I will say coaxing is the nice way of saying manipulating. And it's
Sure.
like manipulating has a negative connotation, but what if you're manipulating someone to do a thing that benefits them? Patrick Chapin coaxed me into writing articles and
Okay.
a similar brilliance to Joe Crosby, really, where he was like, you should write. And I was like, nah, I'm not good. I skipped my last 6 months of high school, like I didn't go to college, like I'm not educated. But meanwhile, every week on the Star City forums, I'm just like in there yelling at people, just like you're wrong. This is why I played, 200 hours of Magic Online this month and my win rate is 77% or whatever. Like just
Right.
basically writing an article for free in the forums every week. And then there was a period where Patrick was like, "Oh, hey, can you? I want to interview you about this deck that you've been playing," which was like a version of a deck that he created. And it was effectively he just got me to write his article. And then after that
Mm.
got published and it was very well received and whatnot, he was just like, "Yeah, see, you're a writer, dummy." And I was like, "Oh." So then I started doing that too.
I don't think I realized you had, like, a personal connection to Chapin.
Well, in the Blue Sky thread, I mentioned 2 mentors. Gabe is one, Jabin
Eh,
would be the other.
that's crazy. I had no idea.
It's weird. It's weird. I met him once, like, the first time, and I was just like, "Weird guy." And then, just, through mutual connections and whatnot, and for some reason, he took a liking to me, but my
Mhm.
experience with, like, most of the people who are, like, pros, like, I had played on pro
Mhm.
tours or whatever, was, like, easy enough for me to qualify, but I wasn't, in that group for sure. And most of
Mhm.
them just treated me like I was a little Barney, little barnacle,
Mm,
and not him. And to this day, I don't really know why.
interesting. So, you would you would consider him a mentor?
Yeah, absolutely.
What are, like, the things that you felt like he really taught you?
I think certainly a lot of how to exist in the content creation space. And he did stuff that was very smart and I think maybe does not get enough credit for, even though he does get a lot of credit for various things. But like just writing thoughtfully and like trying to convey a message and not necessarily just phoning it in terms of like, oh, here's deck of the week with maybe a sideboard guide or whatever, right?
Mhm.
Like he had a bigger vision, wanted to do things a little bit bigger and better than other folks. And he also saw that there was perhaps more that you could do in the space than just write articles and whatnot. And like he got into a bunch of kind of like schemy sort of things where he was like trying to do reality TV shows or whatever. Like
Was he
uh the
really?
the real world, but like Magic players testing for a pro tour or whatever. I think there
Wait,
were like
that's sick.
two failed attempts at that.
Oh, I wish it would have worked. I'd be so up on that.
Given the time frame, I can only imagine it would have been cringe as hell. But
That's probably true. That's probably true. But it's not dissimilar to ideas that I have had and wanted to enact. Like
sure,
as someone who loves reality television, I have long since been like, why aren't we filming more of like this weird niche thing that we do?
yeah, just
That's crazy.
being thoughtful about things. In an area where I think people are not very thoughtful was definitely
Hmm.
very different. And I don't know, just in terms of him writing 2 books, like that was definitely very planned on his behalf. And he saw that as more of like an end game or whatever. Like everything was leading to having this body of work that would allow him to then publish a book that would get him more money, which
Hmm.
would get him to maybe a point of not just, living check to check sort of thing. And
Yeah.
he worked with me for months on end trying to both like motivate me to work on that sort of thing and like get to the point where I would publish and whatnot. And I'm just a lazy ass mostly. I wasn't medicated for ADHD. That was, I think, a big
Yeah,
part of it. But
yeah. Do the way you talk about him, it almost sounds like the impression I get is that he was one of the first people in the space to really understand the business side of things,
for sure,
which I think is like a really easy thing to not get early on in the life cycle of something like this. Like I think it's very hard, and I think we still see like the kind of ripples of this today in a lot of the content and whatnot that exists. Is that like people don't really understand how to monetize what they're doing and how to like turn what they're doing into like a business and a career and stuff. But it sounds like he always kind of had the right head for that.
he was always working. And,
Hmm.
to some degree, I think that is maybe part of what he saw in me or why he spent so much time on me is that, maybe there was some way to utilize me in the future. I don't know. That never seemingly really came to fruition, but I do think that he was very smart about it, and it did open my eyes to just, oh, this isn't like, oh, I, phone in a piece of shit every week and get $100 or whatever. Like you can actually like build a career and a life off of this, and I very much tried to do that and tried to emulate that.
Sure, sure. All right, very different question coming at you. You ready?
Sure.
You ever been in love?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because I would say like the first couple of times that I thought I was
Mhm,
end up sort of paling in comparison to more recent times, and then that makes me
mhm,
wonder if that was actually love. So I
mm, mhm.
say yes, but kind of like I don't know, knowing that I may be wrong, I suppose.
Right, right, knowing that, like, the definition is a little fluid, maybe? Maybe
Yeah,
a little, like
perhaps.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
That's
yeah, I mean, in terms of having someone who I guess in my mind it makes it so I'm not living for myself. I am for the most
mhm,
part like putting this person's priorities first. Like I do care about them. I am infatuated with them enough to the point where it's like I care about them more than I do myself. And to that, absolutely resounding yes.
sure. Sure, sure, sure. I've always felt like you and I are very similar. I think we have a lot of very similar, like, modes and patterns of thinking, and we come to a lot of similar conclusions on things. I am a very queer trans woman with severe ADHD. And so anytime someone has very similar modes of thinking and patterns of thinking to me, I'm always like, how much of that applies to you? Like, obviously, we both have ADHD.
Hmm.
Obviously, we both had traumatic upbringings. I think those things kind of impact these sorts of these sorts of deals. But I guess really the crux of the question is you've never seemed like a guy who like doesn't get or has any issues with like the queer community, but also like I don't know, you grew up in like Minnesota, like I guess like where did that start? Like at what point in your life were you like queer people are cool? Or has that just, like, always been there for you?
So certainly growing up there, and again, my family outside of my mother all fucking sucked in the worst ways,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Uh like for example, like we would go to the farmers market in Minneapolis. I think it was Minneapolis. Every weekend, like during harvest season, and it's just like big city. It is a melting pot. There are people of all these, different ethnicities and whatnot, and just I learned every slur from a very young age,
Sure, sure.
and
Yeah, I grew up
certainly,
in rural Oklahoma in a conservative Christian upbringing. I get it. I get it for sure.
yeah. So that was also very much the same in terms of how they felt about queer people, but I guess it was a thing that like would not be brought up until it was like
Mhm.
presented. So
Yeah,
like there weren't minorities around us for the
mhm.
most part until we went to the farmers market. And then it was like, oh, I hate those, insert random slur
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
things.
yeah.
And queerness was not very visible. Uh
Right.
Largely because it was not safe to, be visible and be queer,
Yeah.
in, the 90s effectively. Uh,
Mhm.
so, like, I don't know, I had a concept of, like, I don't know, like, these people are different than me, but, like, they're still people, and, like, you're saying these things, and I don't know how it necessarily applies to every single one of them or whatever, and I don't know how it necessarily constitutes, like, you calling them a slur or whatever. Like, I always had some amount
Yeah.
of that, uh but, like, my first, like, actual face-to-face interaction with queerness was in high school where, a friend of mine who, like, we were close, and then, I don't know, just, like, high school makes it so you're not necessarily in the same classes, you don't see each other very often, it's like a bigger space, right? And he got outed, I believe, uh, like, unintentionally. Like, it
Mm.
it was definitely not his choice to be
Right, a
outed.
forced outing, sure.
Yeah, and I tried to make it very clear to him, I don't know, just, like, being being emotional or whatever was definitely not a thing I was able to do at that point,
Mhm.
but I definitely wanted to I couldn't say the words like, "Hey, you being queer is fine with me," or whatever. It was very
Yeah,
much
yeah.
a, like, "We're still friends. I want you to know that, like, we're still friends. Like, we're still cool. We don't even hang out all that much anymore or whatever, but, like, I still fuck with you."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that was just the first kind of thing where it was, "Okay, this is how I feel about it," because, like, this thing happened,
Mm.
and it was like, yeah, I don't feel, like, weird about this at all.
Yeah. No, I think that makes total sense. I was always very curious, like, because again, rural Oklahoma, Christian upbringing, like I know what those times and places were like. And I know why, like, I got out of it, because, like, I'm all those things. So, like, I had to, right? Like, it's very quick for me to be like, "Oh, those people that we keep talking about, burning in hell forever, that's me," Like, I'm those people.
Yep.
So, like, obviously, I have to work my way out of it, but a lot of people are never confronted with that, Like, a lot of people can just go forever and be like, "Oh, that's those people, that's not me." Uh, so I'm always curious with people who end up being like really strong allies, like if there was ever like a moment or like a person or like a thing that was kind of the like impetus, of, like, oh yeah, this is how I feel, or if it was just
Yeah.
like I don't know, I was always like chill with it, that kind of thing.
The the thing that seems to be the common denominator to me is, like, the closeness of it to you, like, the proximity
Hmm.
specifically, where it's like, I had a person who, for many years, was one of my best friends, you know,
Hmm.
who ended up being queer. And it was like, yeah, that changes nothing for me. Like, we are still cool. And I could totally see a world where if I don't have that experience or like he doesn't get outed, maybe I feel differently or whatever, or because of when and where I am now in proximity to queerness, like I react differently or something. I don't know. But
Sure.
certainly when it's like, oh, this person seems like, very pro trans or whatever, and you find out that they have like a trans cousin or a trans friend or whatever. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. And there are certainly like the opposite end of the spectrum where it's like you find out trans person came out to their family and they get kicked out and disowned by their
Mhm.
family or whatever, right? But I do feel like for a lot of the, kind of ride or die folks, it is just like there is one person, at least like one connection that they have where it's like, that person is maybe the example of exactly like why this thing should be okay, which,
Mm.
you shouldn't need that, but like it makes it a lot easier to just be okay with
Totally.
this thing
Totally.
that you're unfamiliar with.
It's yeah, and it's definitely, like, the easiest, like, just proximity for sure. Which is why, like, representation is so important, is because it, like, generates that proximity for people that don't just happen to have it.
Yep.
Do you believe in ghosts?
No, but, I also don't have proof one way or the other,
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
I
I'm
feel
kinda
like
similar.
if a ghost showed up and started talking to me, it's like, am I tripping or do I just have to rethink stuff, you know?
Yeah, so I just have to accept that ghosts are real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what choice do I have at that point? I don't know that I'm gonna be trying to then convince other people that ghosts are real because that probably sets me up for failure, but it might change my opinion, yeah.
I've been thinking about this a lot lately because, growing up in the church, as soon as I got out of the church, it was very like, that sucked. That was traumatic. I was brainwashed. That was a cult. It was all this stuff. So as soon as I got out, it was very like, fuck that and fuck anything that even feels like tangentially related to that. Like I took an axe to that whole part of my life, because like
Yeah.
a scalpel just felt like maybe I would miss something, like and I had to like chainsaw it out of my world. So I get rid of it, but then because of, how violent of a separation that is, uh, I spend so much of my adult life in this headspace of like anything remotely spiritual is like trying to hurt me, is like trying to brainwash me, is like trying to manipulate me. So I had like very intense negative feelings about anything. Like even in just like woo woo shit, like horoscopes and like tarot cards and like stuff like this, like, things like that, I would just be like, "Keep it the fuck away from me," like, "I don't believe in any of it, whatever, whatever." And as I have, like, grown past this and, like, healed through this trauma, I've gotten to a point now where I feel so much more secure of, like, "I'm not gonna get brainwashed again." I'm not a child anymore. Like, it's just not gonna happen, like, I know better.
I
Uh,
am easily tricked. However, I will not
I'm
get
easily
brainwashed
tricked.
again.
However, you're not gonna catch me getting brainwashed a second time. Uh, so I've been trying to like open myself up to stuff like that more recently because I'm very intrigued, like especially with like witchy things because I think there's like a lot of real application to stuff like like tarot cards. Like I think tarot cards is a really great example because to me what's really interesting about tarot is it's like a Rorschach test that you give yourself.
Yeah.
Like you flip cards over and you're like, "Oh, I see this card. That probably means this thing, about this part of my life." And it's like, "Okay, the fact that you connected it to that part of your life is significant." Like that is a very significant thing. The cards were just kind of like a vehicle to get you to think about it. Like to like get you to kind of like say it to yourself. And I think that's really interesting. Um, I was talking to a friend recently because she had been sick, so I made her some soup. And I was really thinking about how like that feels so magical to me. And on the one hand, I love cooking for people. It's just a thing I really enjoy doing. But, like, cooking for someone who's sick, it's just, like, one, there's, like, a very real practical, like, you need this to survive and you are wounded right now. So, like, I have provided for you. That's just,
Yeah.
like, super real and tangible and powerful. But then I think there's also this second element of, like, when I give it to you, you know that while I was making the soup, I was thinking about you, and I was considering you and I was, like, caring about you. And I think there is, like, some very real positive psychological shit that happens when someone is able to deliver, like, a physical manifestation of, "I spent an hour and a half thinking about you, you know, especially when we're sick.
Yeah, I kind of feel that way too. Like there are just some things that can't really be explained, where
Yeah.
it's like old couple, in their 90s, one of them dies, another one dies, 2 months
Yeah.
later.
Yeah. Totally.
Like that sort of
Totally.
thing where it's just like
Yeah. Like, how are you like
you just
psychically keeping each other up?
yeah, you just like subconsciously were like I have no reason to live anymore. Time to go. Time to stop fighting. Time to stop staying alive. Like that's
It's
crazy.
wild. But like, if I just like door dashed soup to my friend while she was sick, she'd still be appreciative, right? Like, it'd still be like, oh, thanks. I did need dinner. But like, you can't tell me it would feel the same. Like, even if it's the same, or even let's say the DoorDash soup is better than the soup that I made, you know? It is just like from a better chef. You can't tell me that you wouldn't rather have the like homemade, I brought this to you. Like, it feels different, right?
It
Like, it
does.
just feels different, and it feels better to be like, I made this for you, instead of like, yeah, I ordered this on DoorDash. It's at your house, enjoy. That's
And
still
it's like
good.
I gotta get better because otherwise Nile is just gonna be hard stuck making me soup until I do.
Yeah, yeah, but, and there's also the fact that I made it in, like, a cast iron Dutch oven that I was like, "This is literally just a cauldron," Like, it's just not that different, like, I don't know. So, I
I
don't know, I've been thinking about that stuff a lot.
I think we are similar in that I also was just like completely off of religion and all of that
Mhm.
sort of stuff. Did not really see any value to it, probably because of, ties to my family and whatnot. But
Yeah,
like
totally.
I do now see more value in it. I think it's very easy to just blanket look at religion and just be like, "Oh, this is all pretty bad," because it
Mhm,
usually ends up being weaponized to some
mhm.
degree. But I mean, that is the fault of the people doing the weaponizing, not just like
Yeah,
anyone who happens to be, uh, just normal everyday person who is like a functioning Muslim or Buddhist or
yeah,
whatever. Like
totally.
those people individually do not terrify me.
Yeah, I know, it
Uh,
has cultural significance.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think it is cool to have that in your life, and I respect that a lot. But
Yeah, yeah, I do too. But anyway, I'm gonna continue down that little journey and just see where it takes me. And you know what? I'm not gonna get brainwashed. Not again. Not a
not
second time.
again. No
Never
chance.
again. Never again. Never
What are
again will
the
you catch me.
odds? What are the odds?
It couldn't. It'd be crazy if it happened. It'd be crazy. Clip this if I get brainwashed. Clip this if I get brainwashed and send it to me and be like, haha, dumb bitch, you did get brainwashed. What do you think is the what you would describe as the biggest mistake you've made in your career?
Just constantly playing terrible decks at Pro Tours. I guess Berlin was one where there was this elves combo deck that was the worst kept secret and
Mm.
put I think 7 copies in top 8. It might have only been 6. And
Oh, just six.
I had this deck like 2 weeks before the tournament, and I was just like, "This deck sucks. Bunch of stupid 1/1s. When have elves ever been good? I could just put some engineered explosives in my deck." And then it's just like, "What the fuck is wrong with me?" You know?
Mhm.
Like, literally just right in front of my face. Had it the whole time. Idiot.
Why do you think you played so many bad decks at Pro Tours?
I put the Pro Tour on a pedestal, to put it simply. I thought in order to succeed at the Pro Tour, you kind of had to be like this mystical person who was very, very good at cards or had broken the format or whatever. And part of it was also because, like, if I just played, like mono red and won a pro tour, I'd be like, that's boring. It does take away a lot of like the mysticism with it and whatnot. So I just kind of like
Mhm.
created that narrative on my own. And it certainly didn't help that like that was all the stories that came out of the pro tour were like, oh, this team broke it with this deck and blah blah blah. It was just
Mm,
like, well, I want to be part of that story, not the one where it's like Affinity wins another pro tour. Yay.
right, right.
And I think it is incredibly fitting that when I did win a pro tour, it was with mono black zombies, just this, it had some nuance, but like was mostly a fairly boring creature deck that was also the most played deck on Magic Online the couple weeks leading up to the pro tour, It's just
Hmm.
boring, boring shit. And because of that, a bunch of people also did not play it in that pro tour.
Just because it was boring.
Yeah. Or they're like the me with the elves deck. I'm just like, when have
Yeah,
elves ever
yeah,
been good? When have zombies ever been good? And it's just like, it's good now. What do you mean?
yeah. Right now is the answer to the question.
Yeah. So it is kind of boring. But I don't know. I got 50K and I don't know more because, worlds
Right.
invite and plane tickets and whatnot. So,
Yeah, of course, of course. What do you think is the best thing you've ever done in your career?
uh, I don't know the stuff that is not related to actually playing the game, basically. Just more of the Chapin esque, like long term visiony type of stuff. Having goals for things and like caring about things and just trying to make this fucking place better than when I got here. I don't know. I'm proud of a lot of the stuff that I did, and I don't know that any of it is clear number one. It's just like they're all good for different reasons, but certainly I will never regret if someone has outed themselves to be a shitty person and I'm like, "Hey, that person's shitty." Uh, I will never regret that. I will always feel good about that, regardless of size, because if our community is one less shitty human, one less predator, then it's so much better.
Hell yeah. My last question for you is gonna get a little personal, and by personal, I mean personal to me, not personal to you.
Mm,
As many of my questions have already been quite personal to you. So when you talked about Chapin, you kind of talked about it in a way where you were like, he was my mentor. All these people saw me a certain way, but he saw me a different way. And you're like, I to this day don't really know why he like took this liking to me, whatever, whatever. So I have a similar question for you, which is when you and I became friends, uh, you were, I mean, you still are, but especially then, you had a way, way, way bigger following than me. We didn't even really operate in the same space, other than the fact that like we both operated in magic as a whole. But you seem to like very quickly take a liking to me and also like show a level of, I think I would describe it as respect towards me that like was very unfamiliar feeling for me, just in terms of like how people in the space viewed me and treated me. And I understand, like I have no questions about like why are we friends today? Like I get
sure.
how we got from like B to C of like you and I have like a rapport and then we become friends. I don't really have ever understood how we got from A to B, which is we don't know each other and then we have a rapport.
It is very simple. And I have basically told you this before, and maybe you did not understand the gravity of it, but the first thing I saw of yours was the takedown of Mark Anthony.
Fuck Mark
E
Anthony.
exactly. And I didn't know shit about that guy before. Like you said, we operated in very different spaces, right?
Yep.
But I saw this person who is going after this dude who is effectively stealing from a bunch of people, and you are spending a bunch of like time and energy and resources into trying to help these people like recoup some of the money that they have lost as a result of this shithead. And I mean, to say it this way is maybe tooting my own horn too much, but game respect game. That was basically all it
Sure.
was. Where I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know this person, but she fucking rules. And I I want to be friends with anyone who is willing to do that sort of thing because I also think it says a lot about like who you are as a person. It could be maybe this guy specifically wronged you or whatever, but that did not seem to be the case. It very much seemed to be
No,
like a
he's never really
situation
done
that
anything.
that you were not involved in. You just took it upon yourself to help these people because who the hell else would?
Yeah.
And why would I not want to be friends with this person? That doesn't make any sense to me. Why would I not respect that person?
Yeah. That's well, thank you, first of all. But it's just really interesting because I don't know. There's like you saw that, right? And you saw like into my character as like a person, and you like gained respect for me. And that all makes sense to me. What's really interesting to me is tons of people saw that, and I think tons of people did gain some level of respect for me. But I think for you, to what it felt like was like you gained respect for me like across the board. Like me as just like a human person became like a person you respected. Like in the same moment that you like discovered who the fuck I was.
Yeah.
Uh Whereas I think for a lot of people, they gained respect for me as like a person who could go after a person who's being shitty, but that did not translate to like any other area. So like they would still treat me disrespectfully as like a magic player, as like this or that or all these other things. But that was never like the impression that I got from you. Like that was you
I
really like from the jump, just like I don't know, treated me way different.
I think the difference is I don't give a shit how good someone is at magic. That is
Yeah,
not my litmus test for do I respect you or not, because that would just be stupid. But I know that everyone does that.
it's
Uh
crazy, right?
it is. No, it definitely is. And I mean, to be fair, non-zero portion of my life was spent basically operating that way, where it's like, oh, this
Sure.
person's kind of annoying or whatever, but they're good at magic. And now I'm just like, I don't care how good at magic you are. Uh like I said, if we can't connect via talking about like high level strategy, okay, I'll find something else to connect on. We care about the community. That's a very easy thing to connect on to me. Like if we're not on the same level magic wise, doesn't affect my opinion of you or how much I want to fuck with you, you know? Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we have plenty of other things in common, and I I don't know, like I'm friends, or I guess was friends with at least a few people I can think of who were not as involved with magic, but we agreed on similar stuff, you know? And just those relationships are more meaningful to me. That's it.
Makes total sense. Well, those are the questions I have. However, I did post this on Blue Sky some number of hours ago,
I
and I'm gonna
saw it. I
rapid
didn't click on the
fire.
thread.
Great. I'm gonna rapid fire some questions, and we're just gonna do really quick, really quickies with these, in lieu of our normal end of the end of the week Briar questions, because we kind of did Briar dirty by doing two back to back recordings. Didn't give them time to send in a question. That's our fault. That's not Briar's fault.
Still the goat.
Uh,
Not Briar's
Still the
fault.
goat. Not Briar's fault at all. We do not hold that against her. Okay, so what's your favorite non-magic thing to do with your magic friends?
Literally everything else. I don't know. I very
That's true. That's a
rarely.
really funny question for Jerry, who does not like to play magic with his magic friends.
Yeah. I a couple years ago, I made friends with a couple people who are semi-local to me, and
Yeah.
we've been like going to RCQs and stuff, and that's been great. But I was like,
Hmm.
my friend Vic does a lot of artsy stuff. He's like doing drawing and sketching, and like
Yeah. Yeah.
I really wanted to be an artist when I was a kid. And
Hmm.
I think I'm like pretty decent at it. I was like, if you just want to have a day where we just sit down and just chill and just like do art, like I would be down for
That's a
that.
good day. That's a good fucking day.
Both these guys are covered in tattoos. I was like, if y'all want to go get a tattoo together, I'd be down to do that.
Yo, that's sick.
We can just skip the magic stuff, you
Skip the
know?
magic part and just do the like fun hang parts.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Hasn't happened yet, but someday. I think I'm going up there this weekend and there's, no magic involved. So
Hell yeah, hell yeah. What's the most tombstone pizzas you've had in 1 week?
probably 7, one a day.
That's that's just the reasonable numbers. Have you played land game? And if so, play or draw?
I think there are different rules variations of this thing.
Huh?
So I will say yes, but maybe not the one that you are thinking of. And yeah, play draw. I don't remember. I don't know.
Sure. All right.
Depends on the
Desert
rule set.
Island book, band, and movie.
I get one of each.
Yeah, yeah. What would your if you're on a deserted island, you get a book, a band, and a movie, what would they be?
Seems like I am just flooded on things to do, things to keep me occupied. I can't get a video game. That's brutal.
No, you're look how quickly we become so greedy. You get a book abandoned a movie, and you're like, no, you got any games on your phone? Come on.
Uh, Book, I have no idea.
Sure.
Band, this is tricky because I have some recent favorites that don't have like a heavy discography. And I'm going to name one where I really, really like a lot of their albums, but not necessarily all of them, which is Law Dispute. Movie, maybe Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Cool.
I don't like comedies.
Uh,
That's a comedy, but I like it.
all right. How do you feel about the nickname Ger-Bear? And let me, before you answer, guess the answer because ironically, you asked me a few episodes ago in the description I'd called you Ger-Bear. And the next week you were like, "How long have you been calling me Ger-Bear in the description?" And I was like, "That was the first time." I was like, "How do you feel about it?" Because I was not sure. Like I know I was not like I should clear this with Jerry. I was just like
No,
Ger-Bear.
yeah.
But you were like, you said that your mom used to call you Ger-Bear, and you thought it was like a nice reminder. So here's my guess as to how you would answer this question. You tell me if it's right or wrong. I think you would say you like it as a nickname from very specific people, but you would not like it from just like random people you don't know.
Yeah, it's fine if it's like a term of endearment kind of thing.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if you are like mocking my relationship to my dead mother, you can fuck off, you know? Like so I don't know, I'm fine with it. I tend to assume that people have good intentions. So,
Cool. Cool, 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 cool. Um okay, this is another one where I want to guess your answer before you give it.
I
Every time there's some sort of pro event like an SCG Open, the commentators will say something like, "Oh man, I love the food in this city." In both of our experience traveling for Magic, which cities have the worst food? And I replied to this and I said, I think Jerry and I will have the exact same answer. And here's what I think both of our answers gonna be. Caldwell, Ohio.
Yo. Okay, you're right. Uh
Yeah.
I don't know that I would have thought about that one.
Yeah.
Kind of blocked it from my memory, TBH. So,
It's really bad.
yeah, I mean, I did take a little stroll up the street and hit up the fine local Dairy Queen, and I like Dairy Queen. I like their
Okay.
food.
Okay.
So,
I like
like,
Taco Bell, and it's the only thing I can eat in Caldwell, Ohio.
yeah, I mean, they don't have what you might describe as options, you know? Uh, Tiny Island of Lido, at Pro Tour Venice. I don't know if Lido is technically part of Venice or if it is a different city entirely. We had to take a boat to get there, a
Mhm.
little ferry, and they seem to be on siesta all the time. Nothing was open. So
Yeah.
if they had food, I don't know. To me, they had zero food. So that one was pretty bad. I think it's all just like the location.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh
yeah. Well, there you go. If you find yourself in Caldwell, Ohio, or the tiny island of Lido, pack a lunch. Are you a fairy or a goblin?
I've been told that I am a fairy and I don't disagree.
I believe I would have been shocked if you said goblin. If the Space Jam aliens came back, which format would you challenge them to, and what deck would you play to save the Earth?
Is it mirror matches or like they're playing like SCG opens and I'm playing Delver or whatever.
I would assume they're just best deck gamers.
Well, then Callblade, I guess, because best deck gamers who played Callblade tended to not be very both like innovative or just like creative in general, and that was very easily exploitable. So
Mm,
Delver Mirrors is like they could still just kick the shit out of you, and certainly the same was true with Callblade. But like, yeah, I'll play Callblade against aliens. Bring it on.
sure, sure, sure. Okay, this is one that I don't understand the question. So I think it's about some Jerry lore that I don't know. Someone said, I've heard so much talk about the Jerry Tea notebook. How did it start? What's your typical process when you sit down to work something out? Do you keep them when they're full or throw them away? The fuck are they talking about?
I can't believe you haven't heard of this. This is ridiculous. Hold on.
Where would I have heard of it? Oh, those notebooks. I've seen you write in notebooks. I've seen you put decks in notebooks.
That's it. I carry a
I
notebook
didn't
with me
know that was a
wherever I
thing.
go. 2 of these are brand new. This is my stockpile.
Wow.
This is the class nature of Israeli society as gifted to me by my friend Vic. That is not a notebook.
You didn't even have to tell me Vic gave it to you. As soon as you said it, I was like, "Oh, Vic probably gave him that."
Vic gives me the best reading material.
Yeah.
Like it is full. It is full. This is why if I say that I am at least somewhat goblin coded, it's because of the notebook behavior.
It's the notebooks.
So yeah, these are all full. And the answer to do I keep them is typically no. And oftentimes I'll lose it before it is full. I'll leave it somewhere. Um, these I have kept kind of because I'm a hoarder and because I'm like, oh, well, maybe I'll want to go back through these and there'll be an idea or something. I never go back through them. That's just ADHD stuff, right? It's like, oh, I'll keep these tabs open so I can go back through them. I never go back through the tabs. I just have 10 tabs open, you know. Uh I I don't know. I think it probably started in high school. I would go to the library. I did not have internet access at home, and my friend Adam, who taught me how to play Magic, told me about these wonderful Magic the Gathering websites where they put articles. So during lunch, I would go to the library, I would print off all the articles, I would read them in class, I would start building my own deck lists in my class notebooks, and then pretty soon it was like, well, I got decks going in math and English and all these other notebooks. I just need a Magic notebook,
Yeah.
and that was it. And I mean, like I said, I used to do art stuff too. So like I was used to carrying like a kind of like sketchbook around sort of
Yeah, yeah,
thing
totally.
too. So this is sketching, but from my brain.
Yeah. No,
But
I dig that.
process is generally if I am building a specific deck or working on a specific deck, I will just write out all the cards that I think could reasonably be included. I will then put the numbers next to the cards that I think are locked, hard locked. And then I will then fill in like, oh, if this is like a 2 to 3 of or something and just start looking at it, see where I am. And then from there, start looking at how many cards do I have to side out in any particular matchup? And, you know, how many cards do I want to bring in? And very rarely do I get to a final, like, oh, here's a pretty sideboarding guide or whatever. But
Yeah, yeah.
uh, that that helps me do a lot of the thinking, and I'm a visual person and whatnot. So
Mhm.
it just really helps a lot.
Yeah, sounds really sick. I might adopt it. All right, here's the last one. Here's the last one, and then you're done with questions. How would you go about regaining your tournament confidence after a long stretch of performing below your personal expectations?
Trying to think if this has ever happened. Just, I mean, like I've definitely had stretches where I don't do well, right? But
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
I don't know that I've
But
ever been
did it
like,
ever affect
"Oh,
your confidence?
man, I
Yeah, yeah.
guess I'm just washed now." It's just like,
Mm,
I don't know, bad beats, bad deck selection, don't understand the format maybe as well as I thought I did. The thing that usually happens is like the best decks are things I don't enjoy playing, so I just try to avoid playing
mm,
them.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's gotta be something that you could do, you know, like a Jerry gets his groove back kind of movie. I never saw those movies, but how I imagine them playing out is like, you know, I go fight some aliens in Cobblade mirrors or whatever, you know? I just whoop them. It's not
Yeah.
close, and I'm like, "Yeah, still got it." Okay? You know, not that big of a deal. Good I do like smurfing.
Mhm.
Are you familiar with the term?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Just beating
So,
up on people that you're way better than.
yeah, kinda. So, you know, going to the LGS and, you know, being nice, being friendly, making sure everyone enjoys themselves, but,
Being the
very
FNM
much
and boss.
very much smurfing.
Yeah. It's fun.
It is
It's
fun.
fun. Winning's fun. I feel like this question to me illustrates a sort of there's like a fundamental thing here that I think needs to be worked on more so than like tournament confidence, and that is the personal expectation part of it. Because I could be wrong, I could be misreading, but it almost to me sounds like there is a level of like when you say personal expectation, I hear you think you deserve to win. You know what I mean? Like you have this like you are expecting to win.
Yeah.
And I think that is the thing that you need to like break in your mind before you can really tackle the confidence stuff. Cuz I think the reason your confidence is taking a hit is because you think you're supposed to win and then you're losing. Where the reality is, it's a game of variance, but also you're never supposed to win. You never deserve to win. You know, like you just win if you play well, work hard, and then get lucky.
Yeah, I mean, I can be confident as hell, arrogant even about myself, my ability, but if I make a string of very poor choices, I don't deserve shit. You know,
Yeah.
I got exactly what I deserved at that point. And then it's just a matter of, well, we need to do better next time. And you can also make a bunch of good choices and still get whooped for various reasons, right? So, I don't know. You have to try your hardest and simultaneously expect nothing, and maybe nice things will happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully that helps. Well, Jerry, this has been an evening of me asking you questions. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope everyone listening has enjoyed it. How do you feel?
Oh, thank God you edited out all those hard questions. No, I feel like
Uh,
I was right. That's how I feel.
you think you were right?
Oh, yeah.
You think I was pulling punches?
I don't know if you were pulling them or I don't know.
Sure. Sure, sure, sure. Well, maybe someday, many, many episodes from now, we'll do a Nile Ask Jerry too. We'll
Nile
punch
gets her
harder.
revenge.
Nile Nile gets her group back. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Leave a like, a comment, repost, leave a question for Jerry. We'll get to him. We'll get to him. Briar, thank you. I know you would have sent a question if we didn't record back to back. I know you will send a question for the next one,
That's what the
and we
patch notes are
appreciate that.
for.
That's what patch notes are for. That's what patch notes are for. All right. Good night, everybody. Love you. Bye.